There's also an option where I can make it go live to Facebook. And so, hold on a second. Let me try that.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Are we ready for the big time?
I'm getting pretty fancy with this. So we'll have, let's see how this looks.
Man, I haven't drank Kilchoman in a while.
Pretty good stuff, I hear.
Yeah, it's not going to be good if I'm just talking to you and Mark.
Well, like I said, Darm's here too.
Yeah, John.
So,
What are you drinking, Jeff?
Can we get another one?
Nothing yet. I will get something to say.
Yeah.
Nice. 5.
Oh, Jeff is here?
Yep, fly from San Diego.
Is San Diego pretty ghost town?
It's very ghost town.
Whoa, you're getting a beer too.
Yeah, it's not looking good. I'm probably going to reverse this sometime soon, but
It may not be obvious, but I haven't shaved, but nobody can tell. Yep.
Or it's darker where you are. There's more bright light on me. Maybe I'll turn some lights off. It'll be less obvious.
There's not enough lights to show a beard here. So are you doing Lion's Share takeout?
I am, actually. That's what's in this box right here.
I've been watching. I'm like,
How is that like? Are the cocktails pretty detailed or are they pretty simplified for this?
It's pretty much, I don't remember what the full set of menu is. Certainly, there are some easy standbys like daiquiris and stuff like that, but also some of the kind of at least long running signature cocktails on the menu, like the Hunter Thompson, things like that. I mean, I guess there's nothing that like is super fancy. Like, they certainly have had a drink on the menu for a long time that had like an IPA foam on it. I doubt that's on the menu, for example, but it's decent stuff. And tequila shots. They do tequila shots.
yeah, being that you're a 3-minute walk from there, perfect.
Yep. No, it's working out. I hope all these restaurants survive this. It's going to be it, obviously. Depending on how long it lasts. We'll see.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of people.
There you go. It's coming together.
Okay.
Well, Jeff, thanks for coming and hanging out from San Diego, buddy.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Have you pretty much you're not flying back and forth at all, right?
Not right now. I mean, I won't start my next job until for another 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I'm even going to be flying back and forth once that starts. Maybe I work at home for a few weeks first. Kind of up in the air.
Oh, so you did take a different job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's cut into Apple.
Yep.
This podcast turns into what's going on in Jeff's life.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, the main goal of the happy hour is just to make us feel normal. So if that means that we get to hear what Jeff is up to and I get a little bit of normalcy, even though he's a stranger, I mean, that's a perfect bar situation, right? You're going to meet new people. You're going to find out what they do for a living. And then you're going to have a couple of drinks and say something embarrassing at some point. So,
Let's give Jeff's book a plug.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Do you have your book with you, buddy?
Is there a copy of it here? I'm not sure.
I bet
I have one not that far away from me.
I bet you in the basement there's 1,000.
that's not very encouraging, Mark. He's got 1,000.
A lot. They ordered a lot. It was cheaper.
All right, there's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, my wife and I wrote a cocktail book.
Can you show it again, Jeff? Sorry, I was on a
And show it again. There it is.
What we drink.
What we drink.
What we drink, a collection of cocktail recipes. I would say the one mistake we made with this book is the title, because the title is horrible for search optimization. But yeah, don't try searching for it because it'll be hard. But I mean, it is on Amazon. You can get it there. I think it's $10. And basically, it came from a basically, so I've been into cocktails for a while, and we decided one year for Christmas that we would try to make a book for our friends to describe kind of like, how to make cocktails, because, a lot of people come to our house for parties and stuff, and they enjoy that. And so it's kind of we go through a set of classics, kind of introduce a bunch of techniques, and then there's also a bunch of modern recipes. And basically this gift we made for people came out well enough that we decided to try to do a little bit more of a self-published thing. And so we did a Kickstarter, and this is where it is. And you can you probably can buy them on Amazon. Amazon doesn't order as many books from me anymore as they used to, but
it's $10 on Amazon, and it's I'll get it between April 15th and May 14th.
Yeah. And, if you want to reach out to me on Twitter or send me an email or something, JWNICHLS is my Twitter handle. And I can send you one directly, and honestly, I'm not going to charge you. So just reach out.
To be honest, Drew, if you want one, I have 3 copies that Jeff gave me. You're welcome to one.
Only if one's signed, that way, just in case.
If Jeff becomes famous, it's going to be tech related, probably.
Yeah, he already is.
Okay, well,
Okay.
All right, so we got 10 people here.
What's up, Robert?
Hopefully everybody's got something to drink with them. Officially this is a happy hour, so we want to make sure you guys are staying hydrated throughout this entire process. But we have some new people, so welcome to Drew's virtual happy hour. This is my attempt to make life a little bit more normal and to meet some new people, introduce them to some either some things they're familiar with or maybe not as familiar with and want to learn more. So tonight, my featured guest is actually someone that I'm painfully familiar with, and that is Robert Horton, and he is my manager over at JVS Imports, and he's the kind of guy that forgets more about single malt whiskey than I know in a single day. So today he is going to talk to us about Kilchoman whiskey, Islay Scotch that we happen to import and distribute. And he's going to share some stories about that. We're going to pepper him with some questions as well. Just so you guys know, if there's ever any point that you have a question or anything like that, just go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can hit me up in the chat and I can ask for you. But we want this to be fun. We want this to be laid back and relaxed. I mean, we're all confined to our homes, and it's not necessarily the most fun right now. I mean, it looks like Charlie's having a good time with Nick Offerman, so that's a great background. But yeah, if you guys have any questions throughout this, just chime in, and then we'll kind of talk product for a little bit, and then after that we'll bullshit for a while and just kind of see how the conversation goes. So with all that said, let me hand it off to Robert. You're going to talk about Kilchoman and everything about the distillery and stuff like that. So go ahead, bud.
Yeah, so thanks for coming and hanging out, guys. So basically, Kilchoman started in 2005. It was the first distillery in 124 years to open on Islay. It was a pretty ambitious project, actually, from Anthony, the main owner, Anthony Wills. Basically, he told me that it cost £5 million to open. And to put that into perspective, in 2005, the dollar to pound was almost 2 to 1. So it was a little under, so it was about $9 million to open. Now, it's interesting to think about that, because today when you see a lot of these small micro distilleries open in Riverside or Iowa or whatever, not to take anything away from them, some of them are eventually going to have probably great whiskey, but a lot of them are opening with like 100,000, 150,000. Well, Kilchoman, it just tells you how hard it is to open a distillery on Islay and get the property and get proper stills. And then, of course, with Scotch whiskey, whiskey has to be 3 years old before it can be sold on the market as Scotch whiskey. So one of the big differences is that investment of having to age whiskey 3 years before you can really draw any revenue. That's a huge difference in America, where we see whiskeys 2 months old, 3 months old, and aging in smaller barrels, you know, to hurry up and get some wood taste. So that being said, I think Islay whiskey, they did release whiskey at 3 years old. I think Islay whiskey tastes in general very good, young, because the peat really pops in it. You'll notice, some of you who've been in Scotch whiskey for a long time, you might remember, and I could actually go to another room and get bottles, but Ardbeg had a 17-year-old core expression that was about $100 on the shelf. Lefroy had a 15, 25, and 30-year-old in their core expression, not just limited releases. And these whiskeys kind of all died out as they ran low on whiskey. And honestly, we chased these whiskeys, but they weren't actually all that amazing. The peat had dissipated in them from sitting years in the cask. So I've always thought that Islay whiskey tastes quite good young. If you ever go to Islay, most of the distilleries sell something that you can only get at the distillery that's 3 or 4 years old, and it's just pure heavy peat. I think what's different, though, a little bit about Kilchoman and the peat is in the palate, right? You kind of have 3 stages in tasting Scotch whiskey, in my opinion. You have your nose, the palate, and the finish. And in Kilchoman, the palate is quite mild, despite having an extremely high peat level. And that has a lot to do with the size of the stills being smaller. It has a lot to do with the longer fermentation time. But they are actually using the exact same malted barley that Ardbeg uses, and they buy it from the Diageo-owned Port Helen maltings there on Islay, other than the 100% Islay, which they grow their own barley for. And so, to put that into perspective, those of you who've tasted Ardbeg and Kilchoman next to each other, both great whiskeys, they have the exact same peated barley, but yet they taste extremely different. And that literally comes down to different techniques. Like I said, longer fermentation versus lower. The stills are much bigger at Ardbeg. So yeah. We do a couple of core expressions. One's called Mokyr Bay, which is this one, is what I'm drinking right now. And Mokyr Bay is named after the beach. There's a beautiful beach right behind the distillery. And Mokyr Bay is currently a vatting of bourbon and sherry casks, no color, 92 proof, no color added, no chill filtration. And but it has changed. So some of you have been drinking Kilchoman for years. It used to be a finished whiskey where it was all bourbon cask, and then a few weeks up to a month or so in sherry. And then they do another core expression called the Snag, which is actually named after a famous creek area on Islay. And this one is now the all bourbon cask and 3 months ish in sherry. So yeah, it's kind of a unique distillery, and like I said, there's a big human story to Kilchoman that I think is probably the neatest part of the distillery, despite the fact that they make great whiskey. They're the only distillery on Islay that is family owned. So the rest of the 7 distilleries on Islay, they're owned by Diageo, they're owned by Brown-Forman. None of them are even Scottish owned, actually. So this one is owned by a small family who basically really went all in when everybody told Anthony that he would never be able to open this distillery, that he was a fool, that it was going to be a bankrupt project. And by the way, since he's opened, about 10 different projects have tried to open and were never able to, just never able to get it going. So basically, he mortgaged off the house and maxed out every piece of credit he could get his hand on, and then borrowed even more money. So it was a tremendous risk that nobody thought would succeed. And in fact, they only started with such small production levels because they really didn't think they were even going to make it. And they did make it, and there's a huge demand for their whiskey, and they've had to put in more stills. So really neat family, and Anthony Wills, the main owner, he's actually from the UK, for the British portion. His wife is from Islay. And
Robert, before you move on,
yeah,
the putting in of more stills, I think with distilleries that have done that before, is it a scenario where they have mimicked the exact the stills that they had before, or do they make new ones, or what's kind of
no, so
the approach
that's actually a really good question, and one that actually really an incredible question, is because Drew's absolutely right. There have been so many really cool distilleries with great whiskey that we loved, and we loved the taste, and they went on away from it into something different by really trying to up the output by making these huge stills. And maybe we didn't appreciate it as much as we did before. So Kilchoman has put in more stills that are mirrored exactly. They're the same style completely. You can't tell them apart. And that is so that we can maintain that taste of the smaller still. And keep in mind that I think now they'll be up to about 500,000 liters a year in production, which still makes them in the top like 3 or 4 smallest production distilleries in all of Scotland. So, so Anthony Wills, who started it, he was an independent bottler. So he was basically buying casks and bottling them, similar to like you see with Gordon MacPhail, Signatory, things like that. And it's a total family project. In the beginning, when I first went to Islay, to the distillery, I mean, his sons worked the registers, the gift center where, you can get a cup of coffee, which is, something amazing on Islay when it's freezing and blowing wind everywhere. But now, of course, they've expanded and they do have employees. But it really was that, like, the sons had done everything. Like, you could talk to any son, and they had been through the painful stages of literally their dad made them learn everything. So each son, there's 3, knows how to bottle, knows how to barrel, knows how to malt barley, knows how to peat barley. And early on, I mean, they even had a fire that almost stopped this from happening completely in the kiln, where literally someone had just stopped watching it and it caught fire. So it's been a real battle, and they went with Sam Filmus of Impex for importation to America at the time. A successful guy, but not well known in the Scotch whiskey industry. And I think that was kind of a cool thing, the small family-owned distillery going with this small family-owned company that Drew and I happen to work for. And it's been a great match because the appreciation and friendship of telling the story of Kilchoman is really important, right? That's a big part of it, is telling that story and how it differentiates with the families. And so it's mostly sold to distributors who are like that, because to sell a product that doesn't have millions of dollars in marketing, you really do need to have storytellers out there telling people why this is unique and humanizing it. And so it's really neat that it's just a chain of real small family-owned businesses for the most part who sell it across the United States. And what else do you want to talk about?
Well, I think the one thing that I always appreciate about some of the stories that you tell is just how ridiculous they can get. And it seems like we have the right amount of company right now for maybe some of your favorite stories, maybe unorthodox stories. Because I think that, when we've done tastings in person, which we do those, guys, just in case you haven't been to one, it's not just all virtual. But you always share like some fun anecdotes and some fun personal stories, like either at the distillery, with Anthony or any of the other sons. I don't know. Is there anything that you can kind of share?
Yeah,
shed a little bit of humanity.
Yeah, Robert, stop being shy, man. This is like the least I've ever heard you talk.
Well, let me stand up. I don't have pants on. Let's get this shyness out of the way. No. So
I don't either.
It's about to get dark in here. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, just the whole working with Kilchoman is such a family atmosphere of friendship, like teasing your brother or your family member. the very first time I ever went to Kilchoman, it was during Islay, which for those of you that don't know, this is it's the only time on Islay where there are more people than sheep. And there are people everywhere because every distillery has it's just a big festival on Islay to visit all the distilleries. And every distillery has a very special bottling for the event. There's huge lines for these bottlings. I mean, it's an incredible event. And it happens to be very busy for the entire family. They don't really have time to do much. And it just so happens that I went to Islay for the first time related to Kilchoman during that event. So you can imagine how busy the family was. And still, I mean, they immediately picked me up, and I spent time with his sons. And I went there on the day of their open day, and I went to Islay without bringing a coat. All I had was a light sweatshirt, which is insane. And I went into the gift shop, and I was looking for a Kilchoman coat to buy because I was literally freezing my ass off. And I'm looking through the coats, and you can imagine there's probably 300 people in that room lined up to get a special bottle. And I hear over the loudspeaker, there's no way we're going to have sizes for you fat fucking Americans. And I'm like, ooh, who said that? Well, I'm looking at the coats, and it was Anthony Wills, the owner of Kilchoman, paying me a little love in front of a lot of people. So that's just one story that popped into my head. But I mean, when the sons come, Drew will tell you at JVS, JVS is a very serious and professional company, but we're also immature and like to have a lot of fun. And that's what happens when their sons come and we do events with them. And, my boss and Anthony will be texting us the whole time, like, don't get my boys in trouble, don't get them in trouble. And so we've done stuff where one of them kind of lays out on the floor when they've got early events, and I'm sending pictures to the guys letting them know that they're not going to make it. So yeah, we have a lot of fun together for sure.
Nice. I think that, for us, definitely at JVS, we're dealing with a lot of niche items and a lot of these family-owned things, which, all of us kind of gravitate towards. But we're constantly inundated, all of us, because I know we have some San Francisco Whiskey Society groups here, members here too. What are some of the frustrating things that you see in the whiskey business right now that you wish kind of some trends would change, and maybe more people would drink, or maybe stop drinking, or just kind of change the mindset towards it?
Well, I think, first of all, it'd be nice if bars were open. But no, I
Agreed. I agree with that one.
Well, I think, it's a tough question to answer because not everybody fits into there's lots of people who are going out and wanting to experience these amazing new concepts and different family-owned brands that don't have the marketing money. So I don't want, so there are a tremendous amount of people doing that, or I wouldn't be in front of you right now because I wouldn't be able to make a living, which oddly enough, I don't make anymore. But as far as the one thing probably for me with whiskey, the frustrating thing is, and we're winning this battle more and more, but just getting people to get out of their comfort level of when I was a Scotch whiskey enthusiast coming up 10 years ago, my actual attitude was I wanted to try everything. And I was even really interested if you said you found something that you thought was really horrible. I wanted to try everything. And sometimes it's hard to get past that. People are subject to marketing and, this whiskey won best whiskey of the year from one guy who writes a book, who sometimes we have found has been paid by some of those brands. And people just really being stuck in that dogmatic world of hey, I need to drink the Costco special that I see an ad for everywhere. And a lot of those whiskeys are good whiskeys, even though they're big brands. But so it's a battle trying to get people, but also with peated whiskey, I think, is a lot of people assume that they don't like peated whiskey based off of maybe one they've tasted, and they really do all taste really different. In that longer fermentation time, for example, in Kilchoman, you know, as you've seen probably, Drew and Mark, who's on this call, that you see a lot of people who say, well, I don't really like peat. I don't like peated whiskey. I don't want to taste it. And then they taste it and they say, oh, wow, it's not like that. And then the funny part is it actually has, this whiskey in particular has more peat than a lot of the ones they're saying are too peaty. So it just goes to show you how much those other factors can change how it tastes. So yeah, and it's actually emotionally exhausting all year long to be selling items that you have to sell off the strengths of the quality and the human aspect, like we talked about earlier, versus the billions of dollar marketing machine of the big brands who will even pay to get their placements. But yeah, so that's kind of it.
Well, and so, you know, and speaking with, you know, kind of about Kilchoman, I mean, something that we've seen recently, you know, they've always done special editions and stuff like that, but we had some really cool expressions come out, like the 10-year sherry cask, and like the Impact's 10-year and stuff like that. What are some of the fun projects that you've seen at Kilchoman? What are some of the ones that stand out to you in terms of what they've done that, you know, maybe they don't have the handcuffs that the bigger brands have? They've been able to try some different things and kind of push the envelope a little bit, even in their, you know, short time being around.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that come to mind on that topic. One is because they're so small, one of the first things I noticed when I visited Kilchoman and we talked quite a bit about at our company is when you go into, if any of you have been to like Glenfiddich or any other big distillery like Kalila or something, you will see casks from many different distilleries be aging the Scotch whiskey because they're buying from cooperages. So you might see, you know, a Jack Daniel's cask. You might see a Heaven Hill cask or whatever. In Kilchoman, you really only see casks from Buffalo Trace for the bourbon cask because they have a direct contract with Buffalo Trace, because they are small enough they don't have to buy from a cooperage. But eventually that might change. But as of right now, they buy exclusively from Buffalo Trace. And I think that adds a real consistency to their whiskey because they are aging exclusively in one kind of cask when it comes to the bourbon casks. Also for sherry casks, they only use the same for PX and Oloroso. But also in the beginning, there was quite a bit of like, we can't get casks, fill anything you can. And here's another funny Anthony story. So I was walking through the warehouse with Anthony Wills, and he let me taste a Kilchoman from a cask, and I didn't even really pay attention at that moment what exactly the kind of cask it came from. And I drank it, and I really didn't love it, to be honest. I was kind of like, it's got a weird sweetness that I don't like mixed with the peat. And Anthony looked at me and he goes, be honest with me, do you like it? And I said, not really. And he said, because it's fucking terrible. And he said, but don't worry, it's a Sauterne cask, and the dumbass Americans will drink it up. And of course he was joking. I mean, he thinks the world of what America has done for his distillery, but just an example of his sense of humor. And I'm really the same way. Like I want to taste peat in its naturalist form. To me is bourbon cask. So even the sherry cask stuff, for me personally, it's not my favorite. I love bourbon cask and peat. Although, you know, Kilchoman is famous for its PX casks and things like that. But yeah, if you walk through the distillery, there's just so many different types of casks from the early days. Also, what's really unique about Kilchoman is I've drank whiskey out of cask 1. I mean, no Scotch whiskey distillery that I can think of has cask 1. You know, they're just too old. The distilleries are mostly from the 1800s. So that's kind of neat, you know, is Kilchoman will probably be around for 100 years. And, you know, I drank from cask 1. I won't be around in 100 years. So yeah, and I think another thing that's unique when you're walking around the distillery is you just feel that atmosphere of fun, that like, people are, it's the same thing with our company. It's like, we give each other a hard time and we joke and play hard. It's the same thing there. Yeah.
So are there any expressions that really stand out to you that have come out over the past few years that you're just kind of like, if you ever come across either like the 100% Isla from 2008 or the Loch Gorm from last year, that like buy as much as you possibly can because that one is just ridiculous?
Yeah, so I'm going to contradict myself a little because I said that I prefer Kilchoman and bourbon casks, but the PX single casks that come out that are about 120 proof, those have all been some of the best Islay whiskeys I've ever had. And we don't get a lot of them, but they do come, and those are some that I would definitely pick up. The Loch Gorm that comes out every year, which is all sherry cask, again, is another one like that. Man, I'd really have to think, like, some of the 100% Islay batches have been just unreal, have been extremely good, and they were always all bourbon casks, and recently they've kind of vatted some of them with sherry cask. And for those of you that don't know, the 100% Islay from Kilchoman, as the name would state, the entire process takes part on Islay, include growing your own barley. So the barley is peated at 25 parts per million versus the standard expressions, which are at 50 parts per million. And if you're not sure how that works, you can Google while we're talking parts per million. So anyway, yeah.
And then when you're talking about vatting, what are you referring to? Like, what's the difference there?
Well, so vatting for me is a term that I just use to just really means blending casks together. So if I say to you, this is a vat of 2 sherry and 2 bourbon casks, that's all I mean is those 4 casks were blended together and married together and then bottled. Yeah. And every now and again too, these things are vatted together and then they're re-barreled in something else to be further finished or whatever. That doesn't happen too much at Kilchoman. It's pretty straightforward.
So like, I mean, I know for, the River City Whiskey Society here in Sacramento, we ended up doing a vatting. Looks like it was 87.5% bourbon, 12.5% sherry. So see, Roe has one right now. I know Darm's drinking it as well. Jacob has one too, which is awesome. How does that compare to the standard Makir Bay? Like, what's the difference between this and then like what the guys chose from River City?
Nothing. No, I'm kidding. Everyone would have been like, what the fuck? No. So the one that, first of all, the one that comes out as the regular Makir Bay is a massive vatting comparatively. It's many, many more casks. Versus when you do your own customization, it's really only coming from a few different casks. The other thing too is the Makir Bay is always 85 and 15, or sometimes 90 and 10, but it does change quite a bit. Like I said, I think that's one thing that makes Kilchoman kind of interesting if you're a little bit of a whiskey collector. I've not really seen a distillery that has ever changed their core expression, the vatting, so many times. And I like it. I like it a lot because it keeps it interesting, and it lets you compare through the years. Although it's getting harder, you got to be able to read the batch numbers on the bottle because now they don't have years anymore. But yeah, so I think really just smaller vatting, and then you get to customize what bourbon to sherry ratio you want.
And one other thing that I think that we always try to emphasize, but sometimes I guess maybe falls on deaf ears because we're fighting against the industry standard. But when you're talking Kilchoman and you look at this front label, okay, and it doesn't matter where which one you're dealing with, you're going to see non-chill filtered and natural color. So can you speak to that and why that's so important to Kilchoman?
Yeah, so if you asked Anthony that question, and I'm going to answer it like I'm him, I have my own opinion that's pretty in line with his, but I'm going to just talk about what I've heard the owner of the distillery flat out say. We want to taste whiskey in its naturalist form, and I think adding E150 which is caramel coloring, is a dishonor to your consumer. Because let's face it, like the only logical reason you ever add color to a whiskey or a spirit is that you want it to appeal more to the consumer. And really it's dishonest. And the other thing is it kind of speaks back to, like, this goes a little bit back to when Drew asked me the question, what is one of your pet peeves about Kilchoman? Actually pet peeves on dealing with people and Kilchoman is I've done so many tastings where people have been critical of the color of Kilchoman and have said, wow, there's no age to it. And it's like, no, the whiskey that you're drinking, a lot of that has paid millions for that spread in GQ magazine, knows that you have this mindset, so they're just adding color. It's pretty simple as that, adding color, and it's dishonest, and it's not whiskey in its truest form. And also, this one I can't 100% say whether or not it's true because I don't know. But there are some people who believe that E150, it's impossible not to add a tiny bit of sweetness when you add E150. There's a huge debate on that I'm not going to go into.
Well, it's not like we have anywhere to go, brother. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're all suffering from shelter in places right now. I mean, if you want to get into it, I've got fucking time. I don't know about anybody else.
No, I think people will fall asleep. But and then also the non-chill filter is really this aspect. This is basically chill filtration on whiskey is exactly this. You take it from the barrel, you drop the whiskey to 0 degrees Celsius, and you run it through this filtration machine that, if you guys ever see, it looks funky. It looks like some kind of thing you would see on Star Trek. It's just this funky little square thing. And it's, running it through the chill filtration strips away the lipids, which is the fats and the proteins, which if you add a bunch of water into Kilchoman, and I've done this a lot at events, you'll see it like clouding up, and you'll get these kind of oil slick looking things on the top, and that's those lipids separating in the whiskey. So the point is we want to drink those lipids. We want to drink the whiskey in its naturalist form, and if you chill filtration, you get rid of those. And the main reason why companies chill filtrate is two reasons. One is if they're going to do a 40% whiskey, which most mass-produced whiskeys are between 40 and 43, the whiskey will cloud up on the shelf. It'll look like muddy Folsom Lake water. All of you may not get that reference, but it'll look like lake water. And the problem is consumers are scared of that. When they see that and it can't be explained to them, they think that product must not be good. They want to see a consistent color. So that's where the chill filtration keeps it consistent looking when it's below 46%. At 46%, you don't really have that problem. But not many people want to mass produce at 46%. You get more. Your company makes more money by watering it down, obviously, right? So we want to taste that. We want to have that non-chill filtration. We want to have those lipids in there. And the whole point is that then now the whiskey's more customizable, right? So if you're drinking the whiskey and it's just at 92 proof even, let's say it's a little too hot for you, you can add a little water and now it's customizable. Yes, Kilchoman is in Texas. 100%, especially in specs. So it's just drinking whiskey in what I would say its honest and most natural form.
Nice. Okay, so you touched on it earlier, and I think all of us here are obviously fans of Kilchoman, and we enjoy peated whiskeys and stuff like that. And I want to say that, or ask you, when it comes to, I guess, converting people into, peated Scotch drinkers, what has been your course of action? I mean, are you doing it through cocktails, or is it more of an education thing, or like what's kind of like your strategy when it comes to like someone like you said it earlier that people can kind of be turned off by the whole peat thing, but like what are the things that you're saying to kind of get people to be like, oh, okay, disarm them to a certain degree, and then let's try this peated whiskey?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's 8 distilleries on Islay, and then outside of Islay, there are actually some Highland distilleries that peat as well, like Ardmore, so Glen Turret. But the thing is that not you guys are killing me with the comments here. Not everyone's gonna like it, but I think the best thing is if somebody's wanting to adventure into Scotch whiskey, and while they're adventuring, they find that they're having trouble with peated whiskey. First of all, there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of unpeated Scotch whiskeys you can drink. But the other thing is I would say you got to try the core expression of all 8 distilleries on Islay, because they really do taste different. If you taste all 8 and you don't like it, then you just don't like peat. You can't force it, right? People don't like peat. If they don't like peat and you want them to drink something a lot less masculine, refer them to bourbon. I'm joking. So
that's all I wanted. That was the only thing I wanted said today.
No, it's okay not to like peat. I'll think less of you, but
okay, so now we're going to kind of move a little bit away from Kilchoman and just kind of more into the man, the myth, the legend that is Robert Horton. Your personal whiskey collection is pretty ridiculous. I've only seen parts of it. I've never seen the collective thing because I know it's in different places. But what's the total number at right now?
Just whiskey?
Yeah, just whiskey.
I think I have 1,043 bottles.
You think it's 1,043?
I have a spreadsheet. So.
And you were collecting whiskey before it was cool. What do you think is the most valuable whiskey that you currently have in the collection?
No, without doubt, I know which one it is. I have a 1952, what we call OB, which means original bottling, straight from the distillery. I have a 1952 vintage Macallan.
What do you rough estimate the value of that?
22,000.
How much?
22,000.
Okay. All right. So
yeah,
everybody.
I'm sure you could sell it for at least 50.
Maybe. But on auction sites, I've seen that bottle for between 18 and 22.
When are you cracking it?
So I actually have 2 of them, and I have one open.
Very nice.
Just so you guys know, there has been veiled offers from Robert, like, hey, we're going to drink this thing together, and then it's just never happened. So he might tell you that you're going to get to drink it, but as Drew,
since Drew has not been to my house since I moved a year ago.
Well, I mean, you guys can see the mask in the background. It's not necessarily a safe place for a good-looking white guy. So, be really careful about the people that you're hanging out with.
And the crazy thing is I paid $600 for that bottle.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what's your personal favorite in that collection right now?
Well, there's drink favorite, and then there's sentimental favorites, right?
Okay, again, we got time.
Some of the drink favorites are I have a 1968 Highland Park. I have a 1968 what do you call it? Bowmore. That is actually a Duncan Taylor independent bottling, and it's one of the absolute best whiskeys I've ever had in my life. I have a 1954 Glenfarclas Family Cask that was bottled in 2005. What else do I have that I loved?
Do you have anything from 1986? We're trying to find something for Roe.
I'm sure I do. I'd have to look through a spreadsheet. I'm pretty sentimental about a few of the 76 bottles because that's my birth year. I have one of my sentimental favorite bottles is I have a Banff that is not amazing.
1986.
I have a Banff that's not super amazing. That's a 1976 that was bottled actually in 2000. So it's actually only a 24-year-old technically, but it's been sitting. And I actually recently, it's one of my last whiskeys I bought. Someone gave it to me for a few $100, and it's cool because it's my birth year. And Banff has a really cool story in that the distillery was bombed during World War II and destroyed. The Germans actually thought it was some kind of intelligence post, and they bombed it, and they rebuilt the distillery immediately after. So it's just kind of a neat, fun story. I do have a Ladyburn in my portfolio, or my collection. That, for those of you that don't know, Ladyburn is a distillery that was only open 10 years. So to have something from a distillery that was only open 10 years in Scotch whiskey history, I think is pretty amazing.
To be fair, we did have a Ladyburn in our portfolio for a hot second, too.
Yeah, Mark, who's listening in, is the one who sold it to someone.
Did he sell it to himself? Because
Did not sell it to myself or to anybody I know.
fair enough.
Right.
I was this close. And then it was like, Mark sold it. Fuck. All right.
Sorry.
But to be honest with you, and to get real sentimental, one of my favorite whiskeys is actually my very first bottle of Mokyr Bay. For those of you that don't know, I'm sure you're not going to care, but the way that I entered this industry was I basically had been goofing off in Europe, backpacking around Eastern Europe. I was in Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, and Estonia, trying to chase beautiful Eastern European women back before I was fat and old. And I came back home, and I was a huge whiskey enthusiast, and I was living in the Bay Area, and I was just kind of goofing off. No real career, not really doing anything, just being worthless, but kind of having fun in life. I had just come out of a long stint of being a Marine Corps officer, and so I just was kind of goofing off in life. And I was living in San Francisco, and I took a part-time job. I'm sorry?
Semper Fi. I was a Marine from 0206.
Cool. And so basically, I took a job at a Bevmo part-time just because I wanted to be around booze. And it was a horrible job, and I didn't work there very long. But while I was in there, I noticed Kilchoman, and that was when I had kind of heard of the distillery, but I hadn't seen it up close. And I saw a bottle in Bevmo, and I basically was curious because a new distillery opening on Islay. I mean, just you hadn't seen that in 100 years. And I literally picked up the bottle and I put it on the shelf in the office, and I was going to buy it and take it home. And true story, Sam Filmus, who's my boss, importer, and very, very dear friend of mine,
And allegedly on the call right now. His name is up. on the happy hour, but he's not showing his pretty face. So
Oh,
allegedly
okay.
he's here.
What a
right
kiss ass, Robert. God damn.
I didn't know he was here. So he brought a bottle in to taste the staff, and I got to taste it, and I basically asked him for a job a few weeks later, and here I am. And it's been now 6.5 years or so, and it's been a fun journey.
Nice. Well, I think I think that's a really good note to kind of end the Kilchoman discussion on, and it's definitely something that means a lot to some of us on this call. We do enjoy the hell out of Kilchoman. We love pushing it and everything like that. So what I'd like to do now is again, the point of Drew's Happy Hour is to get people kind of a little sense of normalcy, right? We're all dealing with this pandemic right now, and it really sucks to kind of be stuck indoors as much as we have been, not being able to go out to some of our favorite bars and to support the people that we enjoy being around. So I kind of want to open it up now, and if you have any questions for Robert, please go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and start throwing those out. Or if you, I know I've seen throughout the night bottles popping up and showing what people are drinking. So if you want to pop your bottle up and share what you're drinking, we'd love to see that too. And just kind of see like some of the things that you guys are really excited about and things like that. So I'm going to just be quiet for the next 15 seconds and kind of let people do what they want to do.
Hey, Robert, I just got a quick question about the coins that come right off a bottle. What's the history behind that, and what caused the brand to decide to have something that comes off the bottle you can actually keep? Was it just a great way for a reminder of people what they bought to have, or what's the story behind that?
I'll be honest with you. My boss, who seems to be listening in, probably knows the answer better to me on this, but I think it absolutely is a little bit like here. I've actually never, honestly, I've never taken one off of a bottle, never. And I just now pulled one off.
That's all I've done is pop them off. That's like my favorite thing.
Really? I've never pulled one off before, no lie, never. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I mean, I assume that it dawned on them that people would collect them. But they don't look different at all, right? So I don't even know how you would tell them apart, except for you'd have 1,000 of them. I mean, Kilchoman took a lot of pride in the design of this bottle. I mean, it's something they're very proud of. And if you've ever bought one of the minis of Kilchoman, the little 50 mLs, I mean, they're like $15 or $14 on the shelf, and it's because they're so expensive to make, because it really is still this unique round design bottle. I mean, honestly, I think the bottle's designed quite nicely, but I'm sorry, I really don't know why he put them that way. I will, if you want to leave your info with Drew, we'll find out and email you.
Sure, thank you.
So what's the relationship between JVS and Impex?
Yeah, so basically JVS is our distribution side of the house. And so we distribute for California only. And it's run and operated by the same gentleman, the same owner, basically, Mr. Sam Filmus. And then he has a business partner named Val. But so I think the thing is when you're importing and selling things that are unique and have a real human side to them that need to be articulated to the public, you need to be able to control as much of the distribution as you can with your own people so that you can tell this story. And so that's why we have the companies, because believe it or not, JVS in California has maybe at any given time around 12 to 15 sales reps. And with those 12 to 15 people, and I'm even counting a couple managers who call on maybe a limited amount of accounts, for these couple of people, they sell more than some states who carry Kilchoman and have maybe 500 reps on the ground, is because, again, we just know the product better and we sell it. So they're basically, sister companies. And with the 3-tier system in America, you have the, Sam is texting me. Let's read his text here in a minute about the, can you guys still see me?
Yeah, kind of. Well, you're frozen, it looks like.
But
you're smiling, so it's great.
Okay. Okay, so this is directly from the importer. It's a symbol of Kilchoman being made from 3 natural ingredients: water, yeast, and barley. I saw them being applied to the bottles by Anthony's wife, Kathy. Yes, please collect them all. The background color would designate a specific expression style. So I apologize that I either knew it and didn't remember, or I didn't know.
That's actually really cool. I'm going to keep an eye. Well, once I buy more bottles, I'm going to keep an eye at the differences.
Buy all the bottles, Darm. That's all I want you to do, buddy. Is just buy all the bottles.
I think that they're also the only other. So Bruichladdich for part of their stuff, and also Kilchoman are the only people who bottle on site. Is that right? A bottle on Islay without shipping it back to Glasgow.
Yeah, Kilchoman definitely doesn't do that, and I'm trying to remember if I've seen any of the other distilleries with bottling at all. I've been to all 8 distilleries on Islay, and I don't remember anybody having bottling. If you're saying Bruichladdich had it,
just a I forget which one. It was Kilchoman, because I got this picture right here. They're bottling something. It might have just been the 100% Islay.
No, Kilchoman bottles everything on the island. But I'm trying to think if any of the 8 distilleries, other 7 distilleries bottled at all. I don't remember seeing any of them bottling.
There's one other, but I forgot. But my point was that they still do bottle. I mean, our bottles come from this room that was on Islay, which is pretty cool.
Everything is aged and bottled on Islay. Yeah, a lot of others distilleries do age their whiskey in the mainland. They just don't have the warehouse space. So what was the question that we were in the middle of answering that we went away from for a minute?
I have no idea. I think we started with what the difference was between JVS and Impex, and then Sam texted you, but you were rambling a little bit, so shocking development.
Yeah, so anyway, so I hope that answers. Yeah, with the 3-tier system, it's pretty common. There are quite a few importing companies that then have like a separate company to distribute, at least in their state or maybe a few states. But for us, I think it was just a brilliant thing to do, because who knows Kilchoman better than us, right? As an example, and we import more than Kilchoman. There's some other distilleries and things we can talk about sometime.
Yeah, we'll do those in future happy hours. And I'll say, as someone who doesn't make any decisions or anything like that, I mean, I you could probably argue for almost some level of like nepotism, in like a booze sense, right? If you're importing it, like that's the one that you're going to push the most. And obviously the guys always want us to to push their stuff and to talk about the different things that we bring in. And but it's always we love working with rad spirits. And if you're a rad spirit, whether it's imported by Impex or not, it doesn't matter. Like they just they want to push good stuff, and that's what JVS wants to be known for. Now unfortunately Impex imports a lot of really rad stuff, so it's not really like I don't have to like stretch too much to be like, oh yeah, and then also there's this bullshit vodka. Like I never have to say that, like we have nothing but cool stuff that we get to work with. So
and they were really stoked on the whole Impex thing. I mean, they were very excited that I knew what it was, and I was out there a couple months ago, and I mean I love the distillery so much. It was that was one of my favorites. So you went out to Kilchoman, is what you're saying? Yeah, back in November.
Nice. Well, I mean, I can say this. I mean, someone who's one of the, I guess I'm not new anymore, but it's because it's been a couple of years. But I think what I love about about the JVS and Impex team is that, you know, once you're in, like you're in, and then we have this unprecedented access to people. You know, like I've reached out to, you know, people at Kilchoman, I've reached out to people at Pendarren, and it's so easy to get information, and they're so excited that you want to do stuff. I mean, we have a new project coming out that we're actually going to do a happy hour with next week. And I reached out to the brand ambassador. I was like, hey man, do you want to join my virtual happy hour that, you know, I've been doing for 2 days? And he's like, hell yeah, let's do it. You know, so it's a really cool relationship that we've been able to set up. And then, you know, the friendships that I've been able to develop across the United States just alone with our different, you know, brokers has been awesome. So it's a fun company to be involved with. And, you know, for you guys that are in different states and stuff like that, you know, Grant, I know you're probably you need some Islay Scotch at your Mexican bar, so make sure you bring that stuff in. But yeah, it's just cool. It's a fun.
I think
we're
I have
small.
some in my home bar somewhere.
Oh, perfect. That's what we're talking about.
Let me interrupt for just a sec. So Sam did text me, the CEO of Impex, that Kilchoman is the only one bottling on Islay, and that's what I thought, because when I toured everywhere, I didn't see a bottling area in any distillery. I think I saw one at Ardbeg, but it was like an old one they had used like 100 years ago. It was just on for display. But yeah, no one's bottling there. And I mean, it's cool to the human story, right? Because of the family concept and how, like I said, I've been at the distillery in the middle of Fish Isla when James Anthony's son gave me a tour and then was running off, and I was like, oh dude, aren't you coming to drink with me? And he was like, man, I got to do bottling right now, and then we can hang out, you know. So I mean, it just goes back to that whole family participation that I love so much about the distillery. But I don't want to also imply that it means the other distilleries don't have good whiskey, because they do. So
When are you going to Scotland again?
Me? Probably not anytime soon, unless you want to buy a couple of casks and I'll take you there. But no, I mean, I actually was in Scotland not that long ago. I didn't visit Kilchoman, but I was there visiting some other really cool projects that we're working on. So I think it hasn't even been a year, maybe 8 months since I've been in Scotland. I was there last spring, actually, so maybe it is coming up on a year.
If I buy one more cask this year, do I get to go?
If you buy a cask of Kilchoman, I would say 75% chance.
Hey, Rocco, let's split one.
I'm down to do it. But no, next time when you guys are going, I don't mind paying my own way, but I would like to go with somebody that's actually been there, you know.
What's the price of a cask? Someone's texting. So that depends. Yeah. It depends on, I'm going to give you retail numbers because I just need to for this call, right? I'm not going to give wholesale numbers because there are non-wholesale buyers in the call. The retail of a cask, it really depends, because if you have a PX cask or a full sherry butt or a bourbon cask, I mean, the yields are going to be different, right? But typically today, the bottles retail, if they're cask strength, which is typically we retail for around $120 to $135 a bottle.
How many bottles?
Like I said, it really depends on the age and the type of cask, but anywhere from 200 and something to 300 and something.
Bottles?
Yeah, like
about 50 cases.
Yeah, so like I think between like 230 and 245 is what I've seen typically. Bottles.
What did we get, Drew? How many cases?
We did a vatted. So
we did a vatted. How many cases was that though?
We did a single cask.
20 cases?
Yeah, it was 120 bottles. So
okay.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a different situation. I mean, if we went ahead and did a single cask expression, I mean, obviously we're getting up into those, bigger numbers in terms of where we're at right now with the whiskey group. So,
Yeah.
But I mean, we have somebody like Jacob on our side. He can take half of it.
What do
So-
you do?
Let's do it.
What do you do, Jacob? I'm sorry.
I just drink
sure.
scotch. I love it. I
He's
like
he's living the retired life. All right, guys. He's living the retired life.
No, just temporary. But I actually went to the distillery, and that was my first. They open at 10 a.m. It was kind of weird to be drinking scotch at 10 a.m. But it was a great experience, and of all the things they had there, I actually preferred the Impacts. So this is the cask pick. It's bourbon. I think it's doing the math here, 7-year. That was, I like that more than anything they had at the time at the distillery. So I like the idea of being able to, bring in. I also have the Sacramento guys. I don't know. I haven't been formally introduced to you guys, but I just like the idea of a single cask rather than you guys said you have a couple that you blend together.
Well, to be honest with you, to give you the straight, blunt answer of why we did this, why we did this program that was created by my boss, Sam, is we wanted to create, I think, an environment where, one of the challenges is for retailers is to buy a full cask and have those 240 or even 300 plus bottles if it's like a full sherry butt or something, And so this gives them the opportunity to buy a much smaller quantity that they've still personalized for their clubs and things, and to make more of an exclusionary environment, because, the big guys, when they sell you cask, they force you to buy the whole cask. Sometimes even still 40% or something they want to do. It's crazy. But so I think it was just really to open the door. And then also it kind of, if you want to collect them, it gives you a chance to taste all those different variations of sherry to bourbon ratio that different clubs, different retailers pick on the vattings. And we've had certainly, Rocco, if you don't mind, I'm going to give the whiskey shop in San Francisco just a little shout out. Like those guys have done so many different variations. I mean, you could collect them and really taste those differences, and sometimes they even have maybe two of them at the same time. And
I think this
Ro's going to get that big in Sacramento, baby.
I think this vatted cast that we did was kind of a litmus test too. Like we survey the group all the time, and we say, oh, what do you want? I want something crazy. I want something different. I want a scotch. And say, okay, well, we'll do this vatted cask, and we roll it out and kind of gauge, like, hey, if it kills it, maybe we should buy, a bigger cask. But I did have a question for you, Robert. Kind of just in whiskey in general, like, I've seen a bunch of different people talk about, like, oh, the chemistry changes when I open it up for 2 months, and I don't drink most of my bottles unless it's aired out and all this bullshit. And I think someone that has 1,000 bottles, most of which are probably open, would be able to say, like, have you had that experience where you've drank through a bottle and found that it's been different, or you've enjoyed it or not liked it as much throughout the lifespan of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that happen with that. One is, sometimes I think when a bottle sits for a long time open, that the cork can dry out a little bit. And then you start to get oxidization, and the whiskey typically doesn't taste that good. So that happens quite a bit when you see somebody who is saying that a whiskey changed over time. It could be how it was stored, the cork dried out, things like that.
They're pussies and they don't drink it.
Also.
Well, dude,
I've had one bad experience with the cork is actually loose when I bought it.
When you have hundreds of bottles open, you'll literally die if you drink them all. I don't know if you know that or not. But you will.
Yeah, I do.
You will actually pass away. But
you look alive and well. I don't know.
I'm trying.
Believe it or not, man, I drink far less than people think.
Do you ever mess with argon then?
I'm sorry?
Do you ever consider like with wine, oxidized pretty fast?
Yeah, no, I've never messed with that. But yeah, I do think that whiskey can change quite a bit in time over glass as it sits. Completely sealed, probably not unless it's really old, really old. I have some bottles unopened from like the early 1900s that when you open them, you definitely can tell that it probably wasn't supposed to taste this way because the oxidization just happens over 100 years or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think they change, and one thing I've been fortunate enough to really learn, not just Scotch whiskey, but I've traveled all over the world, even looking at Limbonog producers in the Philippines. But like in mezcal, I mean, that's a huge principle of mezcal is resting it in glass and letting it change, the flavors mellow, and the fruits tend to come out more when they rest in glass. So I imagine that it's happening in whiskey too. There's quite a few people who debate this, but you can debate it all you want. But when you do taste like this bottle of Seneg I've had is a sample bottle that I've actually had for a really long time. And I just tasted it tonight for the first time in a while. And it's definitely a lot mellower than when you open a fresh bottle.
Yeah, I think
you can even
Monday,
see like my cork is not even like my cork is kind of like my bottle is so old.
Yeah, I think Monday when we were drinking mezcal on Drew's thing.
Virtual happy hour. Branding.
Yeah, virtual happy hour. Copyrighted. Some of the mezcals, I was like, wow, this is like a lot easier for me. It could have just been because work is fucking crazy, but I was like, man, this is way easier to throw back. Like, I'm really enjoying this a lot more than when I, popped it open a couple months ago. But in general, like everything I buy from JVS, I drink through incredibly fast, and that's why there's like still fucking bourbon bottles on my shelf, like Penderyn, all the mezcal, all the shit that I buy at these tastings that JVS puts on, I just fucking fly through.
First of all,
See, and that's the thing is like, Patrick also like, that's a perfect example. It's like when people taste, why these tasting events are important, right? When people taste, you develop them and you introduce them to different things. And that's what I'm seeing in Sacramento is like, Drew always, gets an argument with me that, oh, you got a lot of bourbon bros that are coming in. They're coming in and buying all this bourbon. Like just for my whiskey of the week this week, he was giving me shit that, oh, let me guess, it's another bourbon. But,
it was Henry McKenna. You totally let me down. It was totally let me down.
But, that's the thing is like, a lot of these bourbon guys, as they try different things, and that's where JVS has been really good for me, is that once we get people to try this, they're building that palate and they're coming back and asking for different things, right? Look at Dar on this chat. I know him, like, before he never bought any Kilchoman bottles, and now he wants to buy all of them, right? And same thing with Patrick. Patrick used to be like a whiskey guy. Now he's expanding into mezcals and different things.
Hold the fuck on. I was drinking mezcal before I was buying bourbon from you, okay? Before we put that timeline on.
First of all, guys.
Really hard question. That's what it comes down to.
We certainly appreciate the business, and I think, that's what really JVS is. It's really just a group of friends who work together who are super nerdy about booze. And if you're a geek with booze in California, we're typically the distributor that everyone knows. My mic sounds weird.
Your audio's coming out really weird.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear you, Robert, right now. I just had a question for you, Robert. Like, I feel like one of the hurdles that especially Kilchoman has, especially within the Scotch industry, is they're still relatively new distillery, right, comparative to many other distilleries. And one of the hurdles that you mentioned earlier was the fact that a lot of people have this criticism that you guys are, like, the whiskey that you have is young. I'm wondering if that could be part of a not-age statement. To be quite frank, I wasn't too impressed with the Makro Bay when I first tried it, but I didn't think it was bad. But the one whiskey that really turned me to Kilchoman was your 12-year club release last year, which I think was it might have been a PX or it might have been an Oloroso finished or matured, and I think it was fantastic. Is there any kind of idea of, or do you know if you guys are kind of looking into age statement like core releases or anything in the future?
First, can you guys hear me okay or no?
Still
You sound like
good.
you're underwater.
What did you do? What did you do?
I didn't touch nothing.
What did your cat touch?
Nothing. Hold on, let me mute and unmute. Any better?
Eh.
You still sound like someone's like stepping on your ball sack.
What should I do?
We could.
Hold on. Let me see if I can mute you and then unmute you.
I swear I haven't touched anything. Well, can you guys hear me good enough to answer the question or no?
Yeah, if we all stay quiet, we can hear you.
All right, look, so basically, as far as an age statement goes, we do release some limited releases that have age statements on them. I don't know if Kilchoman will ever have a core expression one because I think it's a pragmatic situation, right? Like, if the time is right and they have enough whiskey, they probably maybe will do it. But I've talked to Anthony himself, and he told me as of now he doesn't want to have one because he feels like the whiskey is good enough. And one thing that you guys don't know is that we select a lot of these limited Kilchomans. Sam, myself, and maybe one or two other people, we taste these casks and we pretty much in unison decide on which one we want. And if sometimes we've even done where like if 4 of us taste and 3 of us love the cask, but one of us was just no, we don't bottle it sometimes. Or sometimes we tell that one person to fuck off. But usually we're in consensus about it. And believe it or not, man, we don't always choose this whiskey. We have liked a lot of the younger ones better because, like I said, the peat tastes better in them. I think with Kilchoman in particular, as far as having a 10-year-old age statement, they probably really just don't have enough whiskey for that.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't really an anticipation, I think, of getting this big. They didn't know they'd be this popular. I mean, they are selling everything that, they bottle. Nothing is sitting around. And it goes back to, like, I think it depends, too, on some of your preference. Like, I love Islay whiskey. My favorite core Ardbeg is not the 10-year-old Ardbeg Huguenot, which is mostly 8-year-old whiskey. My favorite Lefroy is the quarter cask by far. I think the 10-year-old from Lefroy today is garbage. I don't love it at all. It's a Trader Joe's special. But the quarter cask I think is amazing from them, and it's actually much younger whiskey. Yeah. So I don't think the age statement is a problem for Kilchoman. Kilchoman was made to be a very tasty young whiskey. It was, the consulting was done by Jim Swan, who's a guy who specializes, I think, in helping distilleries to an extent produce younger whiskey that's quite good. And keep in mind, when you call Kilchoman young, well, in relative to the rest of the world where they're building distilleries all over Australia and New Zealand and all over America, and you're seeing all of these distilleries selling $70 whiskey that's 3 months old.
Yeah.
Well, remember the laws in Scotland. When you're drinking Mockyer Bay, you're not typically having anything below 5 years old. Yeah. So, or maybe 4. There's some 4 in some of the vattings, but like it's already got some years on it. I think it's quite good. I think that's part of what makes Kilchoman in a league where it's at is not very many distilleries can produce a 3, 4, 5-year-old whiskey and have it taste so well. I mean, certainly not from Speyside. I mean, who in Speyside has a no age statement that's delicious? I can't think of even. Okay, maybe like the Abalora Bunda or something.
Well, I'll tell you this, Joey. Like, someone who has to sell it, just to like get kind of like, your everyday shops and in bars and stuff like that. Like the conversation has certainly changed over the past couple of years. I think everybody here, it's fair to say that they've wised up to the fact that, a big age statement doesn't automatically equal quality, And I know that for my personal self, and at least in the Sacramento area, is that, the conversation that I was having 3 years ago is not the conversation I'm having today. you know, and people that were turned off by the fact that, you know, there wasn't, you know, some sort of number on this bottle. They're not asking those questions anymore, you know, which is cool. Now of course there's still those people, and you know, we deal with those every day, right? You know, it's just kind of your I believe that the term that I learned in your group was the taters. We have to deal with the taters in that situation. But
I got that. I got you covered.
there you go. There's
I got you covered. All right, I got you covered. All right.
So
no, I again, in full disclosure, like again, I think I'm all with you, right? Like if I love my young, aggressive, more aggressive PD Islas, but at the same time, I also do believe that like they're, to me, like at least my experience of tasting, I do think that people are misunderstanding what peat is. Peat is a very complicated thing, and then that where the aggressiveness kind of mellows out over a much older aged whiskey. It becomes much more earthy, and so I definitely think that there's definitely something for everybody. And I for me personally, I think that a lot of people are misunderstanding peat, and
So what I say in that situation, because I mean this is a conversation that I do have a lot as well, when you're talking with Pete, and you know, Pete is something that if you can get into that second and you get that third taste is when that sweetness comes through, right? That we're all who have made it past that.
But speaking of sweetness, though, I mean, I literally got to dip my finger. Well, here I didn't dip my finger. They actually poured it. So Kilchoman's new make, I think they you know, let's say water it down to 62.5% or whatever it is. But it's so I loved Kilchoman's new make so much. I just wanted to bottle it and take it home.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because it's something that I loved when I was there too. I was carrying around a bottle of it, just swigging from it while and it was so delicious. And it reminds me too of, like, we talk about young whiskey on Islay tasting great. So I went to Kalila last time when I was at Kilchoman, and Kalila had a distillery-only release bottle I had never seen anywhere in the world, called the Mock, M-O-C-H. And if any of you really wants to buy it, I know the Whiskey Exchange out of London carries it, even though you can only typically get it at the distillery. I imagine they bought it there. But all the Mock is 3-year-old pretty much on the dot, 3-year-old, really raw Kalila. And I loved it so much better than their 12-year-old. I thought it was amazing. It was amazing. And I actually bought a bottle to take home and show people, and I liked it so much. I really pounded it. I really drank the shit out of it. But
and just to wrap up, you know, kind of my story, and like when I go to different places, is I always make I kind of use the analogy where, you know, when you're talking peat, I think a lot of people, you know, for better or worse, they think of Lafroig, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That tends to be the impression for a lot of people. So what I do is I liken it to being at a party. So let's say you go to this party, you have a great time, you met some really, like, you know, nice girl, nice guy, whatever the situation is, you had a blast, you had drinks all night, you didn't get sick or anything like that. But at one point, somebody walked into the party, some random dude, and punched a girl in the face and then left. That's what Lafroig is, and that's what Lafroig has done to peated whiskey. And it's not at all what the entire party was, despite the fact that you had a great time, but it's the only thing that anybody remembers, right? Because it's so ridiculous. It's so aggressive that that's all that people remember. So that's how I kind of like disarm people, because obviously it kind of makes you laugh a little bit. You're kind of like, yeah, that would be the most ridiculous thing, but obviously it's not the norm. You know, and that's what we're trying to upset. And I even think that when it comes to the River City pick, something that we were trying to accomplish with the vatting percentages that we chose was to make something that, if you were typically not an Islay drinker, which is unfortunately what most of our group is made up of, but we're working on it, is how do we take something that you initially, if you just looked at, you'd be turned off on, but once we actually got you to taste it and try it and let it unfold, you would really fall in love with. And that's actually what we've seen. So you know, when Patrick was talking earlier about kind of how we gauge people and stuff like that in sales, and you know, Kilchoman admittedly was one of our slower ones, but I'll say this: for the people who did buy it, they have loved it, and they've bought it numerous times. And for the people who took that risk, who you know came to me and said that, you know, initially, I didn't want to buy this bottle because I hate smoky whiskeys, but this thing is fucking delicious, and that's
And you sold out of it.
We've done really well with it. I think we might have a couple of bottles left. I don't know if we've sold out completely, but you know, that's a rogue question.
Yeah, no, that's Drew. That's really great to hear, because this is, I mean, for me personally, being so very active in the SF group, like I talked to a lot of mods and admins, and I'm like, dude, when can we get a one of the questions for me personally is just, when can we get a peated pick? Like, can we get a peated Scotch going through, right? Like, especially something like an ex-bourbon cask is not going to yield that much bottles, but even then, trying to push over 150, 200 bottles even from an ex-bourbon cask is still going to be tough for a lot of the group, even though like the SF group right now is sitting at 1,400, but it's still a predominantly, let's say, tater group, right? It's almost all bourbon and rye guys, right? Let's be frank. Like that's where the majority. Yeah.
We're doing the same thing.
So Drew, with you, one thing that you introduced me at, one of many things, is the Honey Blossom line from Tel Aviv. You had the barrel cast and you had the lightly peated. Do you think something like that lightly peated version would actually be a better way to introduce other people into peated whiskeys? Because it's very light. It is actually really, really light. And I actually prefer the bourbon cast over the lighted peated because they're heavy repeat.
Well, I think that when it comes to something like that, so what Don was referring to was our milk and honey expression that we got from Israel, and it's been this really fun expression that we sold out of very quickly. And if you guys haven't got your hands on some milk and honey, you know, find it and buy it. But I think you know, especially when it comes to, you know, Dom's one of our admins and stuff like that, because I've been harping on it so much, is that when you have things like the peated version, which is just a cask that they're using, or even like Penderyn, they do their Kelt. That's also just a cask. It's actually not peat being used. For you guys that your palate has started to progress past it, it almost is like a tease, and it pisses you off, right? Because you're just kind of like, no. I know what this is supposed to taste like, and this is giving me a little bit of what I want. But it's not giving me everything I need. And I think that's where it comes. But in terms of introducing new people into it, I mean, the Penderyn Kelt has been very successful for us in that regard, right?
I love that bottle.
Yeah, it's just something that
that's so good.
It has this beautiful complexity to it, and there's also this familiarity with it too, because they do use or now they refer to it as something different, but basically it's a hybrid still. Okay, so in the States, because we're all familiar with like different craft distilleries and things like that, like we're used to seeing hybrid stills, but over in the UK, like they don't see those very often, so they make a big deal out of it. Where it's kind of like, yeah, there's one in Auburn, there's one in Thomas, there's one literally. So it's kind of what you do out here.
It's a little bit different though, but yes.
It is a little bit different, but I'm just saying, if you're kind of, you know, breaking it down, that's what we're really looking for. So I think we're building it up though, and you know, and I do think that, you know, there's something to be said about the fact that the whiskey craze and really the bourbon craze came up at the same time that social media was really growing and blowing up, right? They grew up together. So they're going to be linked for the foreseeable future. But I think, you know, it's on us, and you know, whether it's enthusiasts, sales reps, distillers, stuff like that, like it's on us to get people introduced to more complex whiskeys. And once people make that eventual jump, it's very rare that you see them going back to bourbon, you know. And I mean, and you guys know how I feel about bourbon, but I always think about it with like, in maybe more appropriate terms, like mezcal to tequila. Like I drink a ton of mezcal, I drink satols, I drink all these different things. When I drink tequila, I look at it as taking a break when I'm drinking agave. Like, you know, it's just like, oh, this is just easy. Like it's going to get me there, but it's just easy. Whereas mezcals are always challenging my palate. They're always kind of pushing me, and I don't always have that in me,
I think bourbon is like, I think part of it came up with just like this craft cocktail revival and this idea of like Americana in the 20s and this weird association that's with it. But I do think that it's like the crowd wants to drink bourbon, and eventually people will get burnt out on like, wow, Heaven, I mean, I like Heaven Hill as a distillery, but like, wow, Heaven Hill seems to put out, a different Old Fitzgerald every 3 months, and I have to get that bottle, and it's probably the same shit, but 6 months older. And I think eventually, like, the market will correct itself of like, you can get a kick-ass bottle of scotch for $100 and it's on the shelf instead of like dragging your balls around town trying to find this bottle that's overpriced as bourbon for 4 or 5 times as much. Palates do change. They're going to develop where everyone's going to, like, okay, I understand bourbon. I'm over it. Like, I think bourbon's fairly straightforward, and I like it. Like, I enjoy drinking bourbon, but like the complexities that Pete presents is like, there's a high cover charge to get past that like smoky burnt Band-Aid flavor for me. But then like once you do, there's all the hot girls are in that club, right? Like the complexities of flavors beyond that smoke. That high cover charge of Pete is like you have to pay to get in, and when you do, it's fucking great. But some people don't want to pay the cover charge.
Patrick,
It's not just Pete; it's also a malt, right?
An ashtray. You're drinking water of an ashtray.
That was the best.
Love it.
I want to use a different analogy. I feel like bourbon right now are like those hot models that really have no personality, right? They're like the 9s and 10s that you really don't want to marry. Like you want to go home for a nice, a fun time. You have a quick date, nice little one night stand. But then like Pete and Scotch and stuff, like they're much more complex, much more interesting. Like you want to.
They can cook.
Yeah, they know how to cook. They know how to, they're the ones that you want to marry, right? That's what it is. It's like they're much more interesting. They actually have a personality to them.
What'll be interesting eventually is when the American market corrects itself in quality versus price of the newer distilleries. That's what will be a game changer with American whiskey, when we actually have 3, 5, 6, 8-year-old product that is worth buying versus right now buying these 3 and 6-month-old $70 bottles. And don't get me wrong, they're, as a whiskey enthusiast, they're good and some of them are fun to drink. Yeah, so I think a lot of it too has been the marketing. American whiskey has had way more marketing in America than Scotch whiskey. Way more.
I just got to take a poll. Has anybody ever banged a supermodel here? Because, like,
Grant.
I have.
No.
You got lucky.
I mean, I'll tell you guys, it's like the worst experience ever. Sorry to burst your bubble.
Well,
but like, just imagine a chick that's completely fucking wasted that just lays there because she doesn't have to work for it because she's too good for that.
Well, wait a minute. Was she awake?
Yes, she was awake.
Did she know it was you?
Totally, it was me.
Did you have to inflate her? That's another question.
No.
Since I will say, this is not Kilchoman or even Islay. If anybody gets a chance at the Lejeune 15 here from Single Cast Nation, this is an ex-bourbon cast. This thing is fantastic.
Oh, look at that. Patrick's got
there
it
we
too.
go.
There you go.
Good minds think alike.
Listen,
Be there in
you guys-
15
you
minutes.
guys
Oh,
can
wait.
buy all the single cast
Distance
stations
source.
from me that you want, okay? I'll let you buy it if you want.
I passed on the 13-year sherry that they had, but this, like, I'm an ex-bourbon guy and I really like ex-bourbon cast stuff. Yeah.
There seems to be a huge amount of Lejeune sherry casks coming into independent bottling right now, and it's crazy because pretty much every single one of them has been really good. It doesn't matter if they're from Signatory, Single Cast Nation. They have all been really, really good.
Yeah, I really like their profile that they usually have. There's kind of a slight bit of funk, but this particular one has a lot of tropical fruits to it, like a big pineapple note to it that I'm
Got
just
that
like, this is
pappy
really
nonsense.
You got some pappy nonsense, Matt?
It's
No,
Dickel.
he-
It's Dickel juice.
He
Happy
got the Dickel
nonsense.
juice.
Yeah, happy
The
nonsense.
Dickel juice.
I had a
Yeah.
quick
Happy
question.
nonsense is Dickel
Rather
juice.
than comparing bourbon to Scotch, I had a quick question. Well, mostly to Rocco, but and again, I've only met you guys now, and Rocco, I've only been in your store once. But I noticed, so for example, like the Macro beer, I don't know if the Macro Bay is restricted to 46 proof. My question is mostly, if you're going to do a pick, doing one that's lower proof versus a cask strength, are you trying to sell more at a lower proof? Are you trying to, not just as a store owner, but also as an importer? What are your, like, what's going through your mind about if you were to pick something that's going to be watered down or whatnot? Are you trying to...
I can actually answer that because this is something that I argue with these guys constantly.
Great.
Because I am an admin within this group, and I've created quite the stink multiple times over this question, and I think part of it ends up being availability. So tastings that we've done before, and it blows my mind every single time, and I've gotten to the point now where I bring it up to the rep and they don't like it at all. But sometimes when we are given samples to taste, we're not given what we're going to get. We're given the actual cask samples, and they say, we'll get back to you. We're going to, but this going to be brought down to 80 proof or whatever. So sometimes it's not up to us. And in some situations, we're okay with that. And we kind of let it go because it's a popular bottle and the guys really like it, and it is what it is. Other times it's been an issue where it's just kind of like, we had one, I want to say it was Yellowstone, right, Ro, when we were at the Southern show?
Yeah.
Where Yellowstone brought us these cask samples that, first of all, weren't very good. But then second, we're like, yeah, we're going to water it down. So it's like, okay, so now you're telling us that you're almost an unknown brand that doesn't do this. Now, in the situation of Kilchoman, because you're doing a vatting, you are getting it at what exactly you're going to get, right? So you're not doing a cask, so you're not trying to like get more bottles or get less bottles. Like you're able to kind of dictate, as long as you hit X amount, you can get that many bottles. Now, with
X amount by price or by bottles? Because you're saying not by bottles. Is it basically by price then?
No, it's like you have, when you do a vatting, you can pick how many bottles you want to get. You just have to hit a minimum. So let's say that minimum is 80 bottles. Okay, it's like, okay, well, we have to order at least 80 bottles of this in order to get it. Now for me, like, I'm always going to be a proponent of trying to get things at cask strength where we can get it, right? Because if you can get something at cask strength, then that means that we can adjust it as we see fit, and that's what we try to promote as much as possible. And if you look at the success rate of it, like the things that we do get at cask strength, or what we taste to what we get, those barrels always do better because we're getting exactly what we want. But sometimes
what's this? I mean, I'm new to this. I'm new to the distributor side, right, or whatever. But so why do you see so many of these things watered down?
Can I answer that actually, Drew?
Yeah, go for it. For sure.
Okay, so let me. There's two answers. There's why this Kilchoman is like that, and then why everyone else. So with the Kilchoman vatting, this is designed, like I said, for maybe a smaller club or a smaller store. Although a lot of big stores buy them to have them too. It's designed to be a more affordable option of a customized whiskey, which, like I said, when Impex came up with it, I don't know of anyone doing anything even close to this. So it was designed to have a lower price point and a lower amount of bottles for the retailer to have to commit to, or bar, whatever, and then have it affordable on the shelf. And to do that, that's 46%. But you're absolutely correct. When we sell an actual full cask of Kilchoman, in my entire time doing this, and maybe we have in another state that I just wasn't aware of, I've never seen us bottle a cask at non-cask strength. So for example, when Roe reaches that stage where he says, yeah, I want a full cask of Kilchoman, it'll be 116 to like 122 proof. It's never not cask strength, unless of course he told us he didn't want it. But then if he didn't want it, then the bottle number, the yield goes way up. So typically that's what we do. You're actually seeing one of the only examples where JVS sells an exclusive product that isn't cask strength. It's really the only one I can even think of. Typically we always are cask strength.
And if you want to expand upon that further, I mean, if you're asking why other companies do this, it's because they want to add bottles to it. You add water to a whiskey,
that's I mean, obviously, right? You get, I mean, that's the bottom line.
I also want to point out, like, so I've talked to a couple people. I don't know if you guys are familiar with 10th Street Distillery in San Jose.
We actually sell that too.
Yeah, they, in my opinion, they do.
We sell.
They're great people.
Oh yeah, they again, my opinion, flat out one of the best. I mean, clear out peated single malt in the market right now. American single malt right out there.
Sweet.
Now, but I was actually talking to one of their investors, and they were telling me that they were a little bit hesitant about releasing their cask strength version of their normal single malt.
Yes.
Because they, and I partly agree with them. They feel like you kind of lose some of the peat essence or peat flavor at a higher proof, right? Now, all granted, you could just kind of water it down yourself, but that's what that's their argument outside of the business aspect of, well, we have our normal standard bottling, I think at 46%, I think that's what it is. But we also, I mean, I got a bottle of their cask strength, and at the same time, I do feel like it's almost a completely different whiskey.
So Haberdasher had a tasting 4 months ago or so. Haberdasher's a bar in San Jose, and they poured their entire whatever they had, and there was a vote that was put out about for one of them. It wasn't the STR. It was the one of the normal peated ones. But basically, they said, "Hey, do you want this one or this one?" And one they're all the same make, but then one was watered down a bit more, and people preferred the one that was a lower proof because you could taste a lot more of it. I prefer higher proof things because I like to manage my own water intake, if you want to put it that way. But for out of hundreds of people, they preferred the one that was lower proof because you could taste a lot more.
Well, and I think there's an example that Robert actually uses.
Makes sense to me.
That I've come to steal and use for my own is that when you have that higher proof, it's similar to having like a very expensive car. Okay, the more that I pay for the car, the more I want to customize it. So if I'm able to start at a higher proof and bring it down, it would make sense to me and to a lot of consumers that they would want to have a little bit of water in there because that water is going to open up the aromatics on it. It's going to open up a lot of flavors on it, right? It's going to bring that proof down, but it's also going to open it up. But when you get to a certain point in your whiskey drinking career where you're just kind of like, I want to choose what that looks like.
Take the governor off.
Does that mean one drop? Does that mean 2 drops? And I think if you're talking mass appeal, sure, maybe some lower proof makes sense. But I think when you do start to get past your kind of like standard offerings, if I'm going to drink something, I want to be in control. If I'm going to spend money on stuff, because with the exposure that I have to all these different things, like I want to have as much control as I possibly can. So I'll take that higher stuff. But it makes sense that in the Haberdasher situation that they would go for a lower proof, because at that point they've brought it down, and it's not just to like create more yield or anything like that. And especially
not at all. No,
it's like when we brought it down to this proof, it was like, this is what we thought was perfect.
And P.S. they're making cocktails with a new make. I mean,
yeah, and there's a few things that I would add. I mean, one thing is 10th Street is using peated barley from Inverness in Scotland. So it's not an Islay style. It's more like a Highland style. It's very good, I agree, but it's totally different too. And how these, like for me, it's funny that we're talking about this because whenever I have Highland style peated barley, I cannot stand it with water at all. I hate the way water tastes added to Highland style Pete, but again, just me. But the one thing that I wanted to add when you were talking about why do other companies do these barrel picks at non-cast strength, sometimes even 80 proof, is I think it's a really simple answer. Is these are not real. They're not real programs like what we're talking about. What they are is, like Patron, right? I know it's not whiskey, but Patron does a single barrel you'll see in stores, and it's always 80 proof. Always. They don't even allow you to not bottle at 80 proof.
They also boil their shit, right? And it's not real.
But
tequila.
but the point that I'm trying to make is that, like, they're not really, when you're that big and you're making that much product, you're not really interested in a barrel program. You're kind of doing it to throw a bone to a couple of accounts who really want it. So they don't really care. All they're doing is barreling essentially exactly like they would do their regular product. It's like I've seen all these barrel picks of and I'm not saying it's bad whiskey or anything, I'm not bad mouthing it, but of Elijah Craig at 94 proof, and it's like, great, everybody has this, what's unique about it? Okay, see, you have one.
Sorry, Rocco, but no, that's not yours, Rocco, but I actually really like Rocco's.
So yeah,
the first one was better than the second.
It's just a way of, like, and I'm not necessarily blame them. I mean, when you're as big as Patron is, are you really fucking around with cast strength barrels? No. And who knows?
Hey, I got a Patron barrel coming, all right?
Do you really?
No. I just wanted to throw that out there just to piss Drew off. Right?
They sell the shit out of their barrels.
Anyway, anybody else?
Real quick though, 10th Street, those guys, they were like, one guy was a software developer, one was like a PhD in biology or whatever. They went to Kilchoman, and they spent over a month, I think it was a month there, and they learned everything that they know from Kilchoman. They had like little 5-gallon like illegal distillery stills in their backyard. They went to Kilchoman and learned everything from Kilchoman. So that's why we're bringing it full circle with 10th Street.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And those guys are super cool. I know it's far from Sacramento, but they're
Oh no, they come up and bug me. Don't worry.
Oh yeah,
they make the trip. So
we should make a trip up to the distillery one of these days.
Yeah,
it's not too far.
I'm like a mile away, so let me know.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
always
definitely
in San Jose too, so I need to make a trip.
We'll definitely do it. Well, well, guys, we're almost 2 hours into this. And, I do appreciate everybody's time tonight. I think this has been our longest conversation. Leave it to Robert to ramble for that much time. But hopefully, again, my goal with this is to give us a little sense of normalcy, right? And I think we really did that tonight. I think we had a good group of people. I think we were able to talk about a lot of fun whiskeys, get kind of our points across. I will continue to do this Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock every night, new guest every single night. It's going to be kind of a pattern. Monday will be mezcal, Tuesday will be tiki, Wednesday will be whiskey, and Thursday will be kind of a
proper 12.
So tomorrow will be Martin Yeager from Yeager Spirit. So if you guys have any interest in liqueurs or starting your own liqueur business, it's a good one to tune in for. And then next
that
week,
is really good stuff.
Next week, I already have a schedule going, and I have a couple fun guests that are going to be appearing. Monday's already booked, Wednesday's already booked, and I think I have Thursday booked. So I will release that via my Facebook and Instagram probably tomorrow or the next day. But you guys, thank you so much, Robert. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge tonight.
Yeah. Thank you a lot, guys. This is by far the best I've felt in a week. This is what I do. This is what I want to do in life, is just talk about booze.
Fucking A, man. And so cheers to all of you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you hopefully again soon on Drew's virtual happy hour. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, gentlemen.
Salute.